When HOA President Karen Whitfield laughed at 8-year-old Emma's science presentation, calling her an embarrassment, she had no idea the disabled girl had just solved an environmental puzzle that stumped scientists for years. Karen's cruelty would soon destroy her own life while Emma changed the world forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Emma's story continued to inspire people around the world. She appeared on national television shows, gave interviews to major magazines, and became a spokesperson for children with disabilities everywhere. A year after the science fair incident, Emma stood once again on a stage, this time at the National Science Foundation headquarters, accepting the Young Scientist Achievement Award as the youngest recipient in the organization's history. "I want to thank everyone who believed in me," Emma's tablet read as she addressed the audience of hundreds of scientists, government officials and advocates. "But I also want to thank the people who didn't believe in me. They taught me that being different isn't a weakness, it's a superpower." She paused, looking out at the audience. When someone laughs at your dreams, when someone tells you that you can't achieve something because of who you are, remember that they are wrong. Your differences make you special, not less than. In the audience, Sarah and David cried tears of joy. Their daughter had not only proven her brilliance to the world but had also become a beacon of hope for millions of children who faced similar challenges. The National Science Foundation announced additional funding for Emma's research, a $100,000 grant to develop new applications for her bacterial treatment method. The money would support a team of researchers working under Emma's guidance to expand the treatment's use in lakes, rivers, and coastal areas. At age 9, Emma Martinez has already contributed more to environmental science than many researchers do in their entire careers, said Dr. Patricia Williams, the NSF director. Her work is not only scientifically significant but also demonstrates the incredible potential that exists when we provide opportunities for all children to pursue their interests. Emma's documentary film, The Genius Behind the Smile, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. The film followed Emma's journey from the science fair humiliation to her international recognition, highlighting both her scientific achievements and the broader issues of discrimination against people with disabilities. At the Academy Awards ceremony, Emma appeared via video link from her home laboratory, where she was working on her #The Genius Behind the Smile. The morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Grove Elementary as parents gathered in the auditorium for the annual science fair. Sarah Martinez clutched her husband David's hand, both of them watching their 8-year-old daughter Emma practice her presentation one last time behind the curtain. Emma had cerebral palsy, which affected her speech and movement, but her mind was sharp as a diamond. What others saw as limitations, Sarah and David knew were simply different ways their daughter experienced the world. Emma communicated through a tablet, her fingers dancing across the screen faster than most people could speak. Sarah remembered the countless nights she had spent with Emma, watching her daughter work tirelessly on her project. While other children played video games or watched television, Emma would be hunched over her microscope, carefully examining water samples and taking detailed notes. Her determination was extraordinary, her curiosity endless. "She's going to do amazing," David whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand. But Sarah's attention was drawn to the sharp laughter coming from the front row. Karen Whitfield, the HOA president and self-appointed queen of their neighborhood, was pointing at Emma and whispering to her group of friends. Karen was a woman who had never worked a day in her life, living off her husband's construction company money, yet she acted as if she owned the entire neighborhood. "I don't know why they even let her participate," Karen's voice carried despite her attempt to whisper. "It's embarrassing for everyone. She can barely walk properly, let alone present anything meaningful. They're just trying to make everyone feel sorry for her." Her friends nodded in agreement, casting pitying glances toward Emma. "It's really not fair to the other children," one of them added. "They actually worked hard on their projects." Sarah's blood boiled. She started to stand, but David gently pulled her back down. "Don't let her ruin this for Emma," he said quietly. "Today is about our daughter." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She had dealt with Karen's cruelty for years. Ever since they had moved to Maple Grove subdivision 3 years ago, Karen had made their lives miserable. She had filed complaints about their wheelchair ramp, claiming it was an eyesore. She had tried to prevent Emma from using the community pool, saying her condition might be contagious. She had even attempted to block the installation of a handicap parking spot near their house. But this was different. This was Emma's moment to shine, and Karen was trying to steal it away with her vicious comments. The principal, Mrs. Chin, stepped onto the stage. Welcome everyone to our annual science fair. Today, our brilliant students will share their discoveries and innovations. Let's give them our full attention and support. The first 6 presentations went smoothly. Sarah watched as children demonstrated volcano eruptions, plant growth experiments, and solar system models. Each child received polite applause and encouraging words from Mrs. Chen. Then came Emma's turn. Emma was the 7th presenter. When her name was called, she slowly made her way to the stage using her walker, her tablet secured to a special holder. The auditorium fell silent except for Karen's barely contained snickering. "Look at that," Karen whispered loudly. "She can barely make it to the stage. This is going to be painful to watch." "Go ahead, sweetheart," Mrs. Chen encouraged, adjusting the microphone and helping Emma position her tablet. Emma looked out at the audience, her eyes finding her parents. She smiled, that brilliant, fearless smile that had gotten her through countless medical appointments, therapy sessions, and difficult days. She began typing on her tablet, her fingers moving with practiced precision. The words appeared on the large screen behind her. "Hello everyone. My name is Emma Martinez and I want to tell you about my discovery." More typing. "Last summer, I noticed something strange in our backyard pond. Fish were dying and nobody knew why. While other kids played video games, I spent weeks testing water samples." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh please," she muttered loudly enough for several rows to hear. "What could a disabled child possibly discover that real scientists haven't already found? This is ridiculous." Emma continued, seemingly unaware of the disruption. Her presentation revealed how she had identified a rare bacteria that was killing the fish. She had created a natural treatment using common household items and had saved not just their pond, but had shared her findings with the local environmental department. The bacteria was resistant to normal treatments, Emma's tablet read aloud. "But I discovered that a combination of vinegar, baking soda, and a specific type of algae creates a natural antibiotic that eliminates the bacteria without harming other pond life." The audience was captivated. Even the other children were leaning forward, amazed by Emma's discovery. Parents were whispering to each other about how impressive the research was. But Karen continued her commentary. "Probably her parents did all the work," Karen said loud enough for Emma to hear. "They're just using her disability to get attention. It's pathetic really. These people will do anything for sympathy." Sarah felt her heart breaking as she saw Emma's confidence waver. Her daughter had heard Karen's cruel words. Emma's typing slowed and she looked uncertain for the first time. "The treatment has been tested in 5 different ponds in our area," Emma continued bravely, "and it has saved over 200 fish so far. The environmental department is now using my formula in other locations." But Karen wasn't finished. She stood up slightly and said loudly, "This is exactly what's wrong with our education system. They're lowering standards to make everyone feel special. Real science requires real intelligence, not pity projects." That was the moment Sarah snapped. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Enough," she shouted. "That's my daughter up there and she's brilliant. How dare you?" "Sarah, please," David tried to calm her, but she was beyond reason. "No, David. I've listened to this woman's cruel comments for too long. Emma is 10 times smarter than Karen will ever be. She's worked harder on this project than Karen has worked on anything in her entire privileged life." The auditorium erupted in whispers and gasps. Emma, seeing her mother's distress, began to cry. The presentation was ruined. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Karen said with satisfaction. "These people can't handle reality. They're too emotional and unstable." Mrs. Chen quickly escorted Emma off the stage while David led Sarah out of the auditorium. Behind them they could hear Karen's voice. "Well, that was entertaining. I hope they learned their lesson about trying to compete with normal children." But karma was already in motion. Dr. James Richardson, a marine biologist from the State University, had been in the audience. He had come to judge the fair as a guest expert, expecting to see typical elementary school science projects. What he had witnessed, both Emma's remarkable discovery and Karen's unbelievably cruel behavior, left him stunned and furious. He had been taking notes during Emma's presentation, completely captivated by her findings. As a professional scientist with over 20 years of experience, he recognized genuine breakthrough research when he saw it. Emma's method was not only innovative but potentially revolutionary for environmental restoration. After the fair, he approached the Martinez family in the parking lot. Sarah was still crying, David was consoling Emma, and the whole family looked devastated. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I'm Dr. Richardson from the State University. I was incredibly impressed by Emma's presentation. Her discovery is genuinely groundbreaking. Sarah wiped her tears, still shaking with anger. Thank you, but I think we've had enough excitement for one day. That woman destroyed everything Emma worked for. Please hear me out, Dr. Richardson continued. I need you to understand something. Emma's bacteria identification and treatment method could revolutionize pond and lake restoration. We've been working on this exact problem for years at the university. What your daughter accomplished is extraordinary. Emma, who had been quiet, suddenly perked up. She began typing rapidly on her tablet. You really think my work is important? Even though I'm just a kid. Dr. Richardson knelt down to Emma's level. Emma, your work isn't just important, it's brilliant. You've solved a puzzle that has stumped scientists with decades of experience. I've seen graduate students struggle with problems simpler than what you tackled. He pulled out his business card. I would like to review your research properly and help you document it for scientific publication. With your permission, of course. David looked skeptical. Are you serious? This isn't some kind of pity gesture? Mr. Martinez, I don't do pity. I do science. And Emma has done exceptional science. That woman in there, he gestured toward the school, clearly doesn't understand what she witnessed today. But I do. Over the following weeks, Dr. Richardson worked closely with Emma to document her research properly. He visited their home laboratory, a converted garage where Emma had set up her microscope, testing equipment, and dozens of carefully labeled samples. This is incredible, Dr. Richardson said, examining Emma's meticulous notes. Your methodology is sound, your observations are detailed, and your conclusions are supported by solid evidence. Some of my university students could learn from your approach. Emma beamed with pride. For the first time since the science fair, she felt confident about her work again. Dr. Richardson helped Emma submit her findings to the National Science Foundation. He also reached out to his colleagues at environmental agencies, sharing Emma's discovery with experts who could implement her treatment method on a larger scale. Word spread quickly through academic circles about the 8-year-old genius who had made a breakthrough discovery. Scientists from around the country began requesting copies of Emma's research. Meanwhile, Karen continued her reign of terror in the neighborhood. She filed complaints against the Martinez family for disturbing the peace during the school presentation. She sent letters to the school board questioning why disabled children were allowed to participate in academic competitions. It's not fair to the normal kids, Karen wrote in her letter. They're being forced to compete against children who get special treatment and sympathy votes. This politically correct nonsense is ruining our educational standards. She also began a campaign in the neighborhood to have the Martinez family removed from the HOA. She sent letters to every household, claiming that Emma's condition was bringing down property values and that the family was playing the victim card for attention. But Emma's story was spreading beyond their small community. 3 months after the disastrous science fair, Emma received an invitation that would change everything. The letter arrived on official letterhead from the International Young Scientists Conference in Washington, D.C. Dear Emma Martinez, Sarah read aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. We are honored to invite you to present your groundbreaking research on bacterial pond remediation at our annual conference. Your discovery has been reviewed by our panel of experts and deemed worthy of our highest recognition. The letter continued, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Young Scientist Achievement Award, making you the youngest recipient in our organization's history. A full scholarship is provided for you and your family to attend the conference. Emma stared at the letter in disbelief. She began typing frantically on her tablet. Is this real? They really want me to present to real scientists. David picked up his daughter and spun her around. It's real, sweetheart. You did it. You actually did it. But the best part was yet to come. The local newspaper picked up the story, Local Girl's Discovery Catches National Attention. The headline was accompanied by a photo of Emma in her home laboratory, surrounded by her research equipment. Then the regional news channels arrived. Reporter after reporter wanted to interview the young scientist who had made such an important discovery. 8-year-old Emma Martinez, who has cerebral palsy, has discovered a revolutionary treatment for pond bacteria that could save thousands of aquatic ecosystems, the national news anchor announced. Her research will be published in the prestigious Journal of Environmental Science, making her the youngest person ever to achieve this honor. The community's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Donations poured in to help with Emma's research equipment. Local businesses offered sponsorships. The mayor held a special ceremony to proclaim Emma Martinez Day in their town. But perhaps the most meaningful gesture came from Emma's classmates. They organized a surprise celebration at school, complete with handmade signs reading, "Emma is our hero," and "Science Star." Children who had barely spoken to Emma before were now asking her questions about her research and expressing interest in science. "I want to be a scientist like Emma," 8-year-old Tommy Chin told his teacher. "She's the coolest kid in our school." The school created a special science scholarship in Emma's name for students with disabilities. Mrs. Chin announced that the school would be establishing a permanent research lab where students could pursue advanced projects. But while the community celebrated Emma's success, Karen's behavior became increasingly erratic and desperate. She couldn't stand seeing the Martinez family receive so much positive attention. Karen began spreading rumors that Emma's parents had hired scientists to do the work for her. She claimed that the whole thing was a scam designed to get sympathy and money from the community. "It's obvious they're lying," Karen told anyone who would listen. "A disabled child cannot possibly do real scientific research. They're taking advantage of people's emotions." She even went so far as to call the local news stations, claiming to have inside information that the Martinez family was running a fraud. The reporters, however, had already thoroughly investigated Emma's work and found it completely legitimate. Karen's obsession with discrediting Emma was consuming her life. She spent hours online, posting negative comments on every news article about Emma's achievements. She created fake social media accounts to spread lies about the family. Her husband, Robert, was becoming increasingly embarrassed by his wife's behavior. "Karen, you need to stop this," he pleaded. "You're making us look terrible. The whole neighborhood is talking about how cruel you've been to a little girl." But Karen was beyond reason. "I'm the only one brave enough to tell the truth," she insisted. "Everyone else is too politically correct to admit that this is all fake." The situation reached a breaking point when Karen decided to take her campaign to the next level. She contacted the International Young Scientists Conference directly, demanding that they withdraw Emma's invitation. "This child is mentally impaired," Karen wrote in her letter. "She cannot possibly have conducted legitimate research. You are being deceived by a family seeking attention and financial gain. As a concerned citizen and neighborhood leader, I feel obligated to inform you of this fraud." The conference organizers were shocked by Karen's letter. They forwarded it to Dr. Richardson, who was serving as Emma's mentor and advocate. Dr. Richardson was furious. He had dealt with skepticism and professional jealousy throughout his career, but never had he encountered such vicious, personal attacks against a child. He immediately called a press conference. "I have been a professional scientist for over 20 years, Dr. Richardson announced to the gathered reporters. "I have reviewed Emma Martinez's research thoroughly. I have personally witnessed her conducting experiments and analyzing data. Her work is not only legitimate but revolutionary." He held up Karen's letter. "What you see here is not scientific skepticism. It's pure cruelty directed at a brilliant child because of her disability. This woman has been harassing Emma and her family for months, trying to destroy a young girl's dreams because she cannot accept that someone she considers inferior has achieved something extraordinary." The press conference was broadcast nationally. The story of Karen's harassment campaign spread across social media with lightning speed. #JusticeForEmma began trending worldwide. Karen's employer, Prestige Real Estate, was flooded with complaints. Customers canceled listings, and agents began resigning rather than be associated with Karen's behavior. Within 48 hours, Karen was fired from her job. The company issued a public statement. "We do not tolerate discrimination or harassment of any kind. Karen Whitfield's actions do not represent our company values. We are proud to support Emma Martinez and her incredible achievements." The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen arrived expecting support from her fellow board members, but instead found a room full of angry neighbors. "Karen, your behavior has been absolutely disgraceful," said board member Patricia Williams. "You have embarrassed our entire community. We're calling for your immediate resignation." "You can't do this to me," Karen protested. "I've been president of this HOA for 5 years. I've increased property values and maintained our standards." "What standards?" demanded neighbor Michael Johnson. "Bullying disabled children? Harassing families? You've made our neighborhood a laughingstock." The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed from her position immediately. But the consequences were just beginning. When the Martinez family arrived in Washington, D.C. for the conference, they were treated like celebrities. The hotel staff upgraded them to a luxury suite, and the conference organizers arranged for special tours of the Smithsonian and the National Science Foundation headquarters. Emma's presentation was scheduled for the main auditorium, with over 800 scientists and researchers in attendance. Sarah and David sat in the front row, bursting with pride as their daughter prepared to address some of the world's leading environmental scientists. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conference chairman announced, "it is my great pleasure to introduce our youngest presenter, Emma Martinez, whose groundbreaking research on bacterial pond remediation has already begun changing the way we approach environmental restoration." Emma walked to the podium using her walker, her tablet ready. The audience rose in spontaneous applause before she had even begun. She looked out at the sea of faces, professors, researchers, government officials, and fellow young scientists, all eager to hear what she had to say. "Hello everyone," Emma's tablet announced. "My name is Emma Martinez. I am 8 years old and I want to tell you about how I accidentally became a scientist." The audience chuckled warmly. Emma continued, "Last summer, I noticed fish dying in our pond. I asked my parents why, but they didn't know. I asked our neighbors, but they didn't know either. So I decided to find out for myself." Her presentation was flawless. She explained her methodology, showed her data, and demonstrated her treatment process. The audience was completely captivated. These were people who had spent their entire careers studying environmental science, and they were hanging on every word from an 8-year-old girl. "The bacteria I identified, Pseudomonas pondensis, had never been catalogued before," Emma explained. "It appears to be a mutation that developed resistance to traditional treatments. My solution works because it attacks the bacteria's cell wall using a combination of natural acids and beneficial microorganisms." Dr. Richardson, sitting in the audience, felt tears in his eyes. He had mentored graduate students and postdoctoral researchers for decades, but none had ever impressed him as much as Emma. When Emma finished her presentation, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Scientists rose to their feet, many wiping away tears. The ovation continued for nearly 5 minutes. "Emma Martinez," the chairman announced, "represents the very best of scientific inquiry. Her work demonstrates that brilliance knows no boundaries, and that the most important discoveries often come from the most unexpected places." During the question and answer session, Emma fielded inquiries from renowned scientists with confidence and precision. Dr. Catherine Miller from Harvard asked about potential applications for ocean restoration. Dr. Robert Chen from MIT inquired about scaling the treatment for industrial use. Emma answered each question thoughtfully, often suggesting new research directions that impressed the questioners. It was clear that she understood not just her own discovery, but the broader implications for environmental science. After the presentation, Emma was surrounded by scientists wanting to congratulate her and discuss potential collaborations. Several universities offered to provide resources for her continued research. But the most meaningful moment came when Dr. Richardson announced a special recognition. "The National Science Foundation has established the Emma Martinez Fellowship," he said into the microphone. "This program will support young scientists with disabilities, providing them with resources, mentorship, and opportunities to pursue their research interests. The fellowship would be funded with an initial grant of $500,000, with additional contributions from universities, corporations, and private donors. Emma would be the first recipient, receiving $50,000 to fund her home laboratory and future research. This fellowship exists because one remarkable young girl refused to be limited by others' expectations," Dr. Richardson continued. "Emma Martinez has shown us that disability is not inability, and that sometimes the most revolutionary discoveries come from minds that see the world differently." Emma began crying, tears of joy and overwhelming gratitude. She typed on her tablet, "I want to thank everyone who believed in me, especially my parents and Dr. Richardson. But I also want to thank the people who didn't believe in me because they taught me that I had to prove myself. Now I want to help other kids like me prove themselves too." The audience gave her another standing ovation. Meanwhile, back in Maple Grove, Karen was watching the conference coverage on television. Her life was falling apart around her, but she couldn't stop herself from being consumed by bitterness. Her husband Robert had moved out the previous week, unable to tolerate her obsession with destroying Emma's reputation. Her friends had abandoned her, embarrassed by her behavior. Her social media accounts had been suspended for harassment. "This is all fake," she muttered to herself as she watched Emma receive her award. "It's all just a publicity stunt." But the evidence of Emma's genuine brilliance was overwhelming. The Journal of Environmental Science had published her research. Universities were implementing her treatment method. Government agencies were consulting her findings. Karen's denial was becoming increasingly delusional. She had lost her job, her marriage, her social standing, and her position in the community. Yet she continued to blame Emma and her family for her problems. The final blow came when Karen discovered that her house was being foreclosed upon. Without her job, she couldn't afford the mortgage payments. Robert had filed for divorce and was seeking custody of their teenage son, citing Karen's unstable behavior. "You brought this on yourself," Robert told her during their final conversation. "You chose to attack a little girl instead of celebrating her achievements. You chose hatred over kindness. Now you have to live with the consequences." 6 months later, the local newspaper ran a follow-up story, "Former HOA President Faces Bankruptcy After Discrimination Campaign." The article detailed Karen's fall from grace and her current financial struggles. But perhaps the most poetic justice came when Dr. Richardson purchased Karen's foreclosed house. He moved to Maple Grove specifically to work with Emma and establish a research facility for young scientists with disabilities. "This house will become a place where children who are told they can't achieve their dreams will come to prove otherwise," Dr. Richardson announced at the dedication ceremony. The house was transformed into the Emma Martinez Center for Young Scientists. It featured state-of-the-art research equipment, accessible workspaces, and residential facilities for visiting researchers. Emma cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony, surrounded by dozens of young scientists with various disabilities who had come to participate in the center's programs. "This building used to belong to someone who didn't believe in me," Emma said through her tablet. "Now it belongs to everyone who believes in the power of science to change the world." The irony was not lost on anyone present. Karen's former home had become a symbol of everything she had tried to destroy: inclusion, acceptance, and the recognition that brilliance comes in many forms. A year later, Emma stood once again on a stage, this time at the National Science Foundation headquarters, accepting an award as the youngest recipient of the Young Scientist Achievement Award. "I want to thank everyone who believed in me," Emma's tablet read as she addressed the audience. "But mostly, I want to thank the people who didn't believe in me. They taught me that being different isn't a weakness, it's a superpower." In the audience, Sarah and David cried tears of joy. Their daughter had not only proven her brilliance to the world but had also created opportunities for other children like her. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story 6 months later. "Former HOA President Karen Whitfield faces bankruptcy after discrimination lawsuit." Emma's family had decided to sue Karen for discrimination and harassment. The case was settled out of court, with Karen required to pay damages and issue a public apology. But perhaps the most poetic justice came when Karen's former house was purchased by Dr. Richardson, who moved to the area specifically to work with Emma and establish a research facility for young scientists. Emma's story became the subject of a documentary film, The Genius Behind the Smile, which won several awards and inspired legislation to protect children with disabilities from discrimination in educational settings. At the film's premiere, Emma, now 10 years old, sat in the front row with her parents. The audience gave her a standing ovation before the film even began. "This is for everyone who has ever been told they can't do something because they're different," Emma's tablet announced to the crowd. "We're not disabled, we're differently abled. And sometimes different is exactly what the world needs." As the lights dimmed and the film began, Sarah reflected on the journey that started with one cruel woman's laughter and ended with her daughter changing the world. Emma had not only overcome the barriers placed before her but had also opened doors for countless others. The girl who Karen had mocked was now featured in science textbooks. The child who couldn't speak clearly had found her voice and used it to make the world better. The student who Karen thought didn't belong on stage had earned standing ovations from the most prestigious scientific institutions in the world. And Karen? She had moved away from the town in shame, her reputation destroyed, her life forever changed by the moment she chose to laugh at a little girl with a big dream. But Emma's story was far from over. At age 10, she was already working on her next discovery, a project that could revolutionize water purification in developing countries. Her home laboratory, funded by the fellowship, buzzed with activity as she and her team of young scientists worked to change the world. The little girl who had been laughed at for being different had become a beacon of hope for millions of children worldwide. She had proven that brilliance comes in many forms, and that sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries come from the most unexpected places. Emma Martinez had not just survived the cruelty of those who judged her. She had thrived, and in doing so, had made the world a more inclusive and wonderful place for everyone. And every night as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, she would whisper, "Remember, sweetheart, you are exactly who you were meant to be." Emma would smile and type on her tablet, "I know, Mom. And I'm just getting started." The genius behind the smile had found her place in the world, and the world was better because of it.